Hey, welcome. I am Tom Sinclair, and this is Streaming Idiots. And let's see if we can't get the main shot right here. Hold on a second. There we go. Got to get all the goodies down below. I am so glad that you tuned in today. For those folks watching live in the chat, thank you. We're suffering some kind of internet anomalies throughout the country in the U.S. today, so we had to adjust our live resolution down to 480 to kind of get it through because we were getting a lot of buffering. But it's nice to be able to make those adjustments on the fly. It really is cool. Now, for those of you watching on YouTube, you know, you get to choose whatever resolution you want to watch at. You can go from 144 to 1080. We're making all of those available to you. I don't think you need to watch me at 1080, but nevertheless. Really excited because we're just getting back from NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters Convention, Conference, and Trade Show out in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. It was a real exciting adventure to be out there. Had lots of folks that I wanted to see. I had a hit list, I said, of folks that I wanted to make sure I saw, and then other folks that I just stumbled over in the process. If you can imagine going into a candy store and seeing, a rack of candy on the left and a rack of candy on the right, and then going through some double doors and going back into the factory where the candy is made, and the factory is about the size of, I don't know, maybe 30 football fields, 30 soccer fields. It was immense, and there were, I think, 4 main halls, and each one was just cram-packed full of all the toys you would ever want to play with. If there was one drone there, one company there with drones, there must have been 50 companies there with drones. I wish I'd taken a picture of it. I was just so excited I hardly took any pictures. I was just boggled. But if you can imagine a professional wrestling ring, and if you extend the sides of that up, like for a cage match, they had cages like that went up, I don't know, maybe 50 feet with a top on the top of it, and they would fly those drones in the cages, and there must have been a dozen or 20 of those cages around with different companies showing different drones. Some of the drones were big enough maybe to lift me, and I go 200 pounds easy. That's on a light day. And it was amazing. It was amazing. And every other doodad and device you could think of in the broadcasting world or in anything approaching the broadcasting world. Now, the streaming world, which is a subset, I guess, of the broadcasting world, was mostly concentrated in one hall. And that's where Blackmagic was, and AJA, and NewTek, and vMix, and PTZ Optics, and a bunch of the other folks that kind of have streaming as their main focus, at least so far as NAB is concerned. So it was interesting to walk through some of those booths. As you walked in the door, the Blackmagic booth was to the right and was immense. It was bigger than the most luxurious mansion I've ever been. It must have been 10,000 square feet. Rumor was that it cost them well over $2 million to bring Blackmagic to NAB. And there were all sorts of stuff there. It was just, again, it was more candy store stuff. My favorite, of course, because I'm such a cheapskate, was the new micro converter. Now, you've heard of the mini converters like USB to SDI or SDI to USB that, from Blackmagic were $300. Well, they now have a micro converter. It's USB powered, and it's $85. And I think that's available now. You can get it on Amazon. I think B&H Photos got it. So take a look. If you're in the market for a converter, you definitely, I would think, why get a $50 knockoff converter out of China and get two, one for now and one for your bag when the first one fails, when you can get an $85 converter from Blackmagic with the Blackmagic name on it. I mean, wow, that was big. So there's a tip for you right off the bat. That was really interesting and fascinating. Popped over from the Blackmagic booth to the AJA booth to see some of the stuff that AJA had going. They had a new capture device that I guess is akin to the Magewell USB 3 dongle. It was a tad more expensive. It was about $350-ish, depending on who you asked. It was either $345 or $349 or $355. They didn't appear to have settled on a price yet, but it had HDMI or SDI input. So that's going to be worthy for folks that want the brand name, that want the AJA card. It's out there. Again, B&H Photo and Amazon are probably where you can go to get that. So that was, and then of course I got a chance to see the actually what I saw at the AJA booth was kind of interesting because it had nothing to do with AJA. What I saw was, well, let me back up just half a step. The new laptops now that are coming out with a Thunderbolt port on them are coming out with a Thunderbolt port that's in the shape of a USB 3.1, I guess they call it USB-C, USB 3.1 port. It almost looks like a like the little port here on my Samsung where you plug it in for power. Looks like exactly the same port. In fact, that's a USB port. So it's USB 3.1, and nothing hooks up to it. All the Thunderbolt stuff that's out there that plugs in Thunderbolt was Thunderbolt 1 or 2, which was just the little square kind of Thunderbolt port. Okay. Looks like a golly, the word escapes me. It'll come to me in a minute. Anyway, so all of a sudden there are all these devices out there that don't work if you've got a new notebook, a new laptop with the new port on it. And so StarTech, good old StarTech, who knows really who is making it for them, but StarTech has come up with an adapter that'll adapt 3.1 to Thunderbolt 1 or 2. And so you can have your device, whether it's a hard drive storage or like our Bolt 4, which is that Thunderbolt 4-port capture card, either HDMI or SDI. And that converter will allow you to convert to the Thunderbolt 3 port. Well, they had a prototype of it at the AJA booth, and it was pretty well traveled, so it had been passed around quite a bit. The device, I'll put a link in the show notes to the, or I'll put the model number because nobody's got it yet. The device supposedly was supposed to be ready at the end of March, and then it was the end of April, and now it looks like it may be early June, maybe late May, but early June before it's released. So it's going to be, I think I saw it on B&H. They're pre-selling it for $65. The list on it is $105. I think Amazon has it for $86 or something like that. But shop it around, and again, I will put the model number in the show notes on that one. So if you've run into that problem, there's your solution. It's a $65 converter that will come someday soon. So that was a neat find at the AJA booth that had nothing to do with AJA, but they just had they had a laptop running vMix, and it was attached to their I/O system, for their 4K I/O or I/O 4K, which is just a Thunderbolt box that has 4 inputs on it, and they didn't have a way to attach it to their new laptop, so they had to find this converter. Anyway, it was nice to see vMix running there. Of course, in this hall that I was in, the South Hall, the South Hall was just all abuzz about NDI. It was NDI everything, and the NewTek folks were all over. I don't know how many times I saw Dr. Andrew Cross, the CEO of NewTek, being interviewed by different people in different booths, and in fact stumbled on him chatting with Martin Sinclair. They were kind of in the shadows, and I didn't think about it at the time. All I thought was, hey, this is great. I know Martin, and I know of Dr. Cross. I'm going to get their picture. So I turned around and went back and said, excuse me, gentlemen, do you mind if I get your picture? What could they say? You know, I'm an idiot. You got to humor an idiot. So they stood up and stood next to each other, and I got a great picture, and I was shaking hands and thanking Martin and introduced myself to Dr. Cross, and he said, "Oh, I know who you are." I got to be careful what I say. Goodness gracious. But it was neat to see them, sitting down off, out of the light, having a conversation about, I'm sure it was about NDI and about new tech and vMix. And so it was interesting to see companies that are competitors at the same time finding some common ground where they can have a collegial relationship. So that was really kind of cool. And I think, frankly, New Tech has done a good job of this with a lot of companies that probably they have some competition with, that they're able to partner on the same side of the fence, at least on a project or two. And I'm sure for New Tech, in order to get the NDI established, they probably had to come out and say, we're going to have to be friends with people we wouldn't normally be friends with. It's kind of like your mom makes you when you go out to play and there's the new kid, and you really don't want to hang out with the new kid on the block. But she says you got to be nice to him. And so that's the way that works there. Working my way through the hall that I was in had, I don't know, 2 or 3 football fields, and then you went down 10 steps, and there were another 2 or 3 football fields. And as you come down the steps over to the right was the vMix sign. And so I made a beeline there. In fact, hat tip to the folks at vMix. I didn't even ask for it, but they sent me I don't have it here, I don't think, a vMix exhibitor badge. So I was able to get into the show an hour before anybody else was on Tuesday. And so I could kind of scout out before the crowds came in. And so I was able to go over to vMix booth and talk to Martin and Tim and meet Kimberly, Kimberly Sinclair, who is Martin's sister, and probably really, truth be told, really the brains behind the outfit. My guess is she's the one that keeps things going, keeps them organized. And then also met Seth, who is with the Cloud Media Group out of Washington, Spokane, Washington. And then there were some other vMix resellers there that we chatted with briefly. So that was a good contact, and we kind of got established on the Wednesday show. If you haven't seen last week's show, it was a great interview with Martin Sinclair, and we finally got him to laugh a little bit. He was pretty energized for this conference and pretty focused, and I think he let his guard down a little bit in that interview and got a couple laughs with us. And then this is, again, all this is before the show kind of really opens for the regular folks. I was a special folk, but it wasn't anything I did. So I made a beeline for the PTZ Optics booth, which was just a short walk away from the vMix booth, and got to see Paul. Paul Richards. If you haven't met Paul, I think Paul's in the chat room right now. Paul is one of those kind of guys that you can tell has never met a stranger. Everybody is instantly, best friends. So I walk up, and he and I have not met. We've talked over the phone. We've, seen each other's videos. And so you kind of, you make some assumptions. Well, I walk up, and I'm not quite sure what to expect. And this guy just comes up and just grasps me in a big old bear hug. And so I knew at that point it was probably going to be okay. And so got to see all the great things going on at PTZ Optics. PTZ Optics is really doing some cutting edge stuff, and it's really fun to watch them do that. They seem to want to be a major player in the market and are investing time and energy and money too in what it takes. They've found out ways to take their PTZ Optics camera and have it transmit video wirelessly. They have found, and they're partnering with a company out of Florida to make their PTZ Optics camera track on faces. And so that's really cool, and they've promised that they will send me one as soon as they have one to spare so that we can test it out here. In fact, what I want to do, I think, and we're going to take a sidetrack for just a second on this subject, I think that auto tracking PTZ camera is going to be a perfect camera for churches, at least churches that can afford it, because it's going to be pretty pricey. It's going to be somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000. But it's going to be ideal in a situation where you want to have a camera follow that moving pastor as he or she preaches their sermon and moves back and forth and here and there within whatever the confines of the sanctuary are. This camera will track them. And I watched it at NAB, and it was really pretty darn cool. Really pretty darn cool. Expensive technology. Again, like anything else that's new and cutting edge, the early adopters, the first responders, if you will end up, paying more than the folks that buy it 2 years later when they've sold 23 trillion of them, and now they're available at Costco or Walmart or Sam's Club or whatever you've got, one of those big warehouse outfits in your neighborhood. So really neat to see that. And they're also working, I guess this is a conference room application where they're going to actually work on the same kind of thing we're doing with vMix in the audio-controlled switcher, is they want to have an audio-controlled PTZ camera so that one camera can function for multiple speakers. So when this microphone is active, the camera will pan to that speaker. As this microphone becomes active, it pans to that speaker, and it happens automatically. That's going to be pretty cool. That's still in the drawing board stages at this point, but pretty neat to have. And we'll want to keep our finger on the pulse of that one as it goes along. So, some interesting offerings from PTZ Optics. I did pop upstairs to the Magewell, they corrected me, Magewell folks, and they had a booth in the back and had all their cards out, and I got to meet Kate and Daryl and Amy, and so that was fun to meet them, and again, be able to know who I was talking with. And got some information from them. They really don't have any new offerings. I mean, they were kind of there at the show because they needed to have a presence at the show. But there was nothing there at the show that I didn't already know about. I tried to fill my pockets up with cards, but they wouldn't allow that, so I had to put them all back. No, just teasing on that one. Actually, those little dongles are pretty small. You could probably cram quite a few of those in your pockets if you wanted to. But Magewell has determined that they are going to be a very reliable source of capture cards, capture devices. And at this point, they are going to allow the NDI software that NewTek provides to make the connectivity to their card. They're not going to do anything out of the ordinary except make the card available in the PC. So we'll have to watch and see, and maybe we can kind of prod them along to do something. I think, frankly, the first person to market, and I haven't seen anybody come to market yet, but the first person to market with, with a box that you plug SDI or Ethernet, or excuse me, SDI or HDMI in one side, you've heard me say this before, and Ethernet in the other side, and it converts so that any camera becomes an NDI compatible camera without having to go through a PC. The first guys to market on that are going to blow it up. It's going to blow up. It's going to blow up. One of the things that I've discovered, and I'll take another side trip on my side trip that came from a side trip. Sorry about this. Am I going to get back to the main subject? We'll take betting odds on that one. Now, I don't remember what I was going to say. We were talking about this. I did see, I didn't see it, I heard about it, that there is a company that has developed such a product. It's not this size, it's more this size. And it is got SDI and HDMI input, and it's got Ethernet RJ45 connectivity on the back of it. It is made by a company called Bird Dog, and I think it's bird/dog.tv. I will confirm that. They announced that kind of through the rumor mill at NAB. They were there. They didn't have a booth. They were there, and I kept trying to catch up with them, and they were too busy talking to people that were way more important than me, and that's okay. I understand that. But hopefully we can get some information. There it is in the chat. Thank you, Rudy. It's bird-dog, bird-dog.tv. And they have, if you go to the website, you can pre-order the card, the box, the dongle, whatever we're going to call it, the converter. That's what we'll call it, a converter. And it, I think, is maybe $695 retail, but you can pre-order it for $595. So it's pretty pricey, but it's there, or at least, you know, it's going to be there. It's supposed to be released in 3 weeks or so. We'll see. And it's another company, it's one of these danged Australian companies again, coming first, possibly first to the market. Now, there may be other people that weren't ready to announce anything at NAB, although what a great place to announce. I mean, if I were Blackmagic and I had something like this, even on the drawing boards, vaporware, I'd be announcing it. I would be announcing it because I would want to scare off anybody else that was thinking about developing something like this. But I didn't hear anything from Blackmagic. Didn't hear anything from AJA. And we're getting some chat in the chat room about that I can't watch because otherwise I would forget what I was going to say next. So the ball is beginning to move that way. We've got a company that has already developed a product. They are putting it into production, and it should be available. I'm being corrected. It's $695 for pre-order, so it must be $795 regular price. So $700 will get you one of those. Why would anybody pay $700 for something like that? Oh, no, I'm being corrected. It's $595 for pre-order. Okay, regardless of the price, why would somebody pay that much? Well, there are going to be specific applications where it's going to be way too cumbersome to attach a PC or to attach a camera to a PC in order to get an image back to another PC to broadcast it. Or even, what about a situation where you need to go 300 feet and you can't do it wirelessly for whatever reason, and you can do it with Ethernet. So essentially your cabling changes at this point. I don't know. What we're going to see is all sorts of opportunities on this, and especially when the size comes down to a decent size and when the price comes down, I'm thinking, you know, anything under $300 is probably going to be fly off the shelf price. Because if I've got, you know, $3,000 invested in a camera, 10% of the cost of the camera to make that camera much more connected to whatever I want to do is going to be a good price. Going to be a good price. Let's see how we're doing on time here. Golly, we're blowing out our time. Before we get out of here, I do want to share with you a clip of an interview from yesterday. It was Martin Sinclair was on the Tech Down Over show with Rick Zanotti. Jeff Blanchard, who's generally on the show, couldn't make it there because of the timing. It was the middle of the night in Australia. And so Rick invited me to come along as kind of a co-host. I think he invited me as comic relief. That's what I think. But nevertheless, I was delighted to be invited. Delighted to be invited. So, yep, they're saying Teradek has an NDI prototype. Oh, my goodness. So we're getting all sorts of information here live. This is why you got to watch this show live if you're watching on YouTube, because you're getting the scoop from all these folks that know way much more than I do. Anyway, so Martin is there at in California with Rick, in Rick's studio, and they had me Skype in, so there's a tad bit of delay on my side of it. It's probably just it takes me so long to think of an answer. But it was nice to see Martin smile and laugh, and Martin is going to talk a little bit about NDI. I know you've already heard all this stuff, but it's really fun and funny, and so I wanted to play it for you. And I've got this queued up in vMix 17's new web browser. Web browser, what do you call it? A web browser input. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So here we go. Let's see if we can queue this up. and then we'll see if we can make it play. Here we go. And play.
Now, in this version of vMix, which is 17, you've included the NewTek NDI, the Network Device Interface. What does that do for vMix?
So NDI is all about connecting live video and audio sources using an ordinary network. So you could consider it enabling your ordinary gigabit Ethernet network as a multi-point SDI router, or you could take a video source from one location and send it to another within your network and share it multiple systems. So a number of use cases for this are desktop capture. So vMix has had a remote desktop capture for a while for both Mac and PC. You run a little program on those computers and you're able to bring in the desktop into vMix. NDI enables that and makes it higher quality, higher frame rate due to the better compression as a part of the NDI standard. So we took advantage of NDI first to upgrade the desktop capture. So that was a very important feature. A lot of people have been asking us for a while to improve the compression of desktop capture. So that answered that customer request. But then also it opened up a whole world of connectivity. Now you can connect vMix to another copy of vMix. You can expand your studio from one man, one PC that Tom has been touting for a long time now, to one man, maybe two PCs, maybe three. And I know Tom has jumped on that a little bit and he's experimenting with multiple computers, because now you can separate parts of your production, you can dedicate one PC to one task, and that helps out a lot. The more complicated a production gets, it makes things easier. And so NDI is just all about sharing videos. No longer you don't need SDI cables. We're hoping in the future cameras will have built-in NDI support. So just with a network cable you could plug in a camera and bring the source in that way. And ultimately it's all about this move to IP that's in the broadcast industry. So previously, or now, SDI is what is used in broadcast. They're hoping to transition everything to IP, and NDI I think is the most effective, both in cost and ease of use, way of converting an SDI-based network or production into an IP-based video production. So it's all very cool.
That's really fascinating. We'll never get rid of IP. Everybody keeps saying one day we'll go past IP. I don't think anytime soon. It just works well. Tom, how have your experiments been going with the multiple computers and vMix?
Horribly, just absolutely terrible. Martin says that by making it complex you make it simpler. No, by making it complex you have more things that can possibly go wrong. At least it's a wonder I have any hair left. But seriously though, what I find is, seriously though, it was just nice to see Martin chuckle, and to be some comic relief in that show. So let's turn that off. There we go. And that was a lot of fun. And in fact, we're getting some chat here in the chat room talking about the magical NDI box that somebody thinks they'll go as low as $150, $200. So that would be really nice, really nice. We're going to be talking obviously more about NDI. We're approaching the end of our time limit here. I'm trying to keep the show to a half an hour so that you can watch it all in one piece. A couple things I did want to pass along here. Is that I did talk to the folks at Decast, and Decast is working on a DVR function. That is the ability to stop a live video like this, back it up, and listen to it again. And they imagine that that's going to happen sometime the end of 2016. I would like to see that sooner than that, but nevertheless, that's coming down the pike. And also, Martin Sinclair let slip, and I'm not going to hold him to this because I'm not sure this is exactly what he meant, but we'll have to go back and check the video from last week. But I think he said that he wants to incorporate the Facebook Live function in vMix as one of the other CDNs that's built into vMix. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that popped back up at some point in the in the vMix 17 discussion as maybe a small add-on to vMix 17. We will see. That would be really, really, really cool if that's the case. The show with Rick and Martin, though, I am using 2 PCs today. You can see over my right shoulder here that I've got my ASUS ROG laptop there, and that is receiving the stream. Well, it's not receiving the stream via NDI. I've got my production PC here in front of me, and I'm switching and doing all the stuff with this PC, and then NDI, it's sending just one input now. One input. Keep in mind, one input. That's a magic number. One input on this PC is receiving the audio and the video in one input, and then I'm able to stream and record. So if you are in a multiple PC environment and you want to divvy up your workload and you want to offload streaming and recording as a separate function to a PC, you can do that with vMix HD Basic, vMix Basic HD, whichever it is. It's $60 US. So for $60, you can convert a second PC into an encoding and recording machine, essentially, with NDI and with vMix. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. I'm pretty stoked about that. And as you know, I am a bona fide, dyed-in-the-wool, one man, one PC, one awesome broadcast guy. But I'm beginning to weaken a little bit. You would say, no, Tom, you're not weakening. You've gone over to the dark side because you're doing it right now. That may be true. May be true. A look ahead, we're going to talk, of course, more about NAB. Next week, we're going to introduce our Black Bag series, which is tips and tricks. That is my black bag. Everybody's got a black bag. It's got cables in it. It's got dongles in it. It's got converters in it. And I'm going to share with you my tips and tricks in the black bag. And so we'll make that a regular part of this show on a regular basis. Somebody says in the chat room, one guy, one input. One awesome show. Thank you, Timothy. The other thing coming up, not next week, but the week after, you'll want to mark your calendar for this, that Paul Richards, that gregarious guy from PTZ Optics, will come on the show and talk about PTZs and optics. And maybe even, we might even have that auto tracker by then. We'll just have to wait and see. It's hard to get a hold of those guys. So that's it, guys. That's it for today. If you want to hang around in the chat room, would love to hang around there. Since Tommy was late to the show, he gets to bring refreshments today. So we'll let him do that. And if you're watching on YouTube, sorry you miss out on the refreshments, but do subscribe to us. Oh, yeah, and thank you for folks that are subscribing and watching. Just this week, we topped over 350,000 views on YouTube, and I really am honored on that 350,000 individuals, or maybe just one person 350,000 times, has decided to watch these little videos. We're about up to the 2,000 subscription mark, and so if you want to subscribe, we'll be announcing 2,000 subscriptions very shortly. We're at, I think, 1,977 or something like that. It's fun. So, from all us, well, that's just me, here at Streaming Idiots, to you, wherever you are, have a great day, and we'll see you next week. And let's see if we can get out of here gracefully. Sometimes we can actually do that.